This is ABC Fora.
Let me go right back to the beginning, because you started talking about the history wars, and I'm actually intrigued to know what's the thing that most upsets you about the so-called history wars, and in the end, do you most blame the politicians, other historians, John Howard in particular?
Well, I think there are many fathers of this disastrous polarity, or stated polarity. What I think, and said the other day at the launch in Canberra, and the Prime Minister said this immensely more eloquently, and they're actually still arguing about what he said in the newspaper. But my view is that no person who is not pathological, achieving an anniversary such as a birthday, looks back and says, my God, your life has been a succession of ineluctable triumphs, ending in Don Bradman's batting average. And similarly, no nation without being pathological can look upon its history as an inevitable and exponential growth of triumph. Because to begin with, not only is that verging on, I'm not calling the people who created the theory fascists, but not only is it verging on sort of fascist nationality, but it denies something I believe on very little evidence, except the way I live, that we stumble towards the light. And our stumbling towards the light is more interesting than this inevitable glory heaped upon glory, heaped upon glory. So that's what I've tried to show in this book. I think Australia does grasp for the light as a society. I may be accused of being naive about that, but I think that there is a very strong tradition of social justice in Australians, and I wanted to celebrate that, but I didn't want to look on Australian history as a series of glorious steps. And I think we have the capacity of humans, as humans, to see events as both commemorating settler endurance and telling us of dispossession. So one can praise Louisa Clifton while one mourns the fate of the Noongas, and I don't think that's a terribly difficult exercise.
Do you think that the history warriors, John Howard in particular, were trying to make that point in a rather sort of, let's say, maybe too brutal way? And I'm intrigued by the question you kept asking yourself while making that speech, but never actually answered, what would you have done? What would you have done if you had that mindset of the early settlers? Do you know, have you thought within yourself, what would you have done if your cattle were, or your sheep were speared, if, let's say, you felt like you were in danger from people who you regarded as savages?
Indeed, I probably, I hope not, but it's very likely I would have armed my convict shepherds with carbines. But my lack of knowledge about what I would do is a wonderful spring in our lives. It's a question we should all perhaps ask ourselves if we are to understand history, because we like to think of massacres as committed by people who are demented, inhuman and so on, but they're committed by humans. And I remember up west of Glen Innes and Tenterfield, before the Mile Creek massacres, Major Nunn and his border police rode through that country with the permission of a temporary governor named Snodgrass and obliterated as many of the Kamilaroi people as they could. And all the way back to Sydney, after that great massacre, they were applauded as heroes. Now, would I have applauded them as heroes? Or what would I have done as Nunn's second in command? I don't know. I hope I would have refused to be there, but I don't know. This moral uncertainty worries me a great deal. One of the reasons it worries me is that I was a seminarian when I was a young and that was a form of far more benign indoctrination than the indoctrination that's behind massacres. I'm not saying that it's not a more benign one, but it's capable for young people's heads to be filled with an ideology which encompasses the entire horizon and justifies many inhumanities.
This is ABC Fora.